As I mentioned in my Bob Bald Loop video, this is a review of my Mountain Laurel Designs Trail Star Tarp. This is the tarp, all total stakes, cords, everything, in a Cedar Summit dry bag, and it weighs total 26.9 ounces. Inside this dry bag I have the tarp in a loke sack plastic bag, and the cords for staking out the tarp are attached to the tarp, and they always stay attached to the tarp. In addition to that, I have some overhead lines that enable me to go from tree to tree and not use my hiking pole under the tarp. These weigh 2.1 ounces, and then I carry 6 stakes. They are Easton stakes. They weigh 0.28 ounces apiece, and all total they're 2.3 ounces. The Cedar Summit dry bag weighs 1 ounce, and the aloe sack plastic bag weighs 1.3 ounces. So all total is 26.9 ounces. In addition to the tarp, I use a ground cloth, and I keep it in a separate Ziploc bag. This particular ground cloth is a SOL emergency blanket. You can get them at REI. They're about $5. It's 5x7. And the ground cloth and the Ziploc bag weigh 3.3 ounces. And that includes the cords that I've attached to the corners and kind of in the midway points. The cords enable me to, one, hang it up along a limb or something to dry it out, and also, if during rain, I can take a stick with a fork in it and put it under the cord, so if I have any water flowing under the tarp, it'll flow under that ground cloth instead of the top, instead of on top of the ground cloth. So now let's put up the tarp, and I'll show you different techniques that I use. Unless it's raining, I always put down my ground cloth first. That enables me to get the ground cloth right in that perfect sweet spot that I can sleep in. And if it's windy, I will sometimes put a rock on these corners of the ground cloth, or I'll use the cords that I mentioned earlier and just take a stick and run it in the ground. And then I mentioned earlier about grabbing a stick with a fork. So in the event I might have any runoff, which is rare because I'm particular about where I put up my tarp if it's going to rain, I can just run that in the ground, and that'll kind of keep the edge up, and the water will flow under the ground cloth rather than flowing across the top of it. The Overland cords that I carry is a Zingit cord. It's very thin. I carry a 30-foot section, another 15-foot section, and another 30-foot section. I can hook these cords together using a girth hitch. I've got loops tied on each end of the cords. So that'd give me an option of 30 plus 15 is 45, or I can go 30, 30, and 15 and go all the way up to 75. Rarely have I used a 75-foot overhead line, but I have often used the 45-foot. And in addition to that, I carry 2 extra cords for staking down my tarp in high wind. On one end of the 30-foot section of cord that I use all the time, I have an S-beaner attached using a girth hitch. But what I'll do is just wrap this around a tree and clip it to the S-beaner. That way I don't have to tie any knots. On the other end of the 30-foot overhead line, I have a night ease cord tensioner that I keep attached with a girth hitch. That's just so I don't lose it. So what we're going to do is remove the cord tensioner and then place the cord tensioner like this. So I'm going to make a loop in my cord, and I will run it through the hole in the top of the cord tensioner and then run it around the cord tensioner so that the cord tensioner is now attached in the middle of the overhead line. Then I'll take this end and I'll run it around the tree, slide it through the hook, pull it tight, and then through the other end of the hook, and then I will do that generally 3 times over the hook again, and like that. And then I'll just kind of wrap this around the tree and just tie it off or run it through the other end of the overhead line. That way it's very taut, and I keep this, I don't know, maybe 5 feet, 4.5 feet high, something like that. Depends on how far I've got the overhead line. If it's 45 feet and there's going to be a lot of stretch, I might go 5.5 feet. Or if it's shorter, of course, in that case, I might go 4.5 feet. On the top of the tarp, there is a loop, and I have attached to that another small S-beaner. This enables me just to clip the tarp to the overhead line, and then my cords are color coordinated, and they're different lengths. So on the rear, I've got some yellow cords that are about 3 feet long, and then on the corner I have some red cords that are about 5 feet long, and then on the other corner, the 5th corner, I have an orange cord. It's about 10 feet long. That enables me to tie this end off to a tree if that option is available. These Easton stakes have a hole in the head, and I've attached the cord with a bowline knot. I've run the cord through the hole and attached it with the bowline knot. What I normally do is put up the rear, I stake out the rear of the tarp first, and I get it straight so that it is parallel with my ground cloth, and that helps me square everything up. Next, I will stake out the front of the tarp, and again, I have the stake attached to the cord with a bowline knot. Today I'm using my hiking stick to support the front of the tarp, so I'm just placing it in the ground, wrapping the cord around the handle, and then staking down this corner. Next, I will stake out the 4th and the 5th corner, and the tarp is starting to take shape. When I first staked out the rear of the tarp, I just staked it out in a straight line to square it up with the ground cloth. Now I'm going to pull out the temporary stake, swing it around so that it's in alignment with the seam and the top of the tarp. Now I will go to the 4th and the 5th corner and just tweak it just a little bit so that I have that nice line with the seam and the top of the tarp. Each of the cord tie-outs have a tensioner, so it makes it real easy just to adjust it and pull it tight. On the sides of the tarp, I have a cord each attached, and what I will do if I want a little headroom or some room at the foot, I will take a stick about 2 feet long and just wrap the cord around it and then stake that out so that gives me just a little bit of headroom. Of course, if the weather's going to be really bad, I would stake that out straight without the stick. Each side of the tarp is about 7 feet long. This is fair weather mode with only 4 corners staked down and the 5th corner supported with my hiking pole. If I think that it might storm during the night, I will set up the tarp in what I call storm mode. And the first thing I have to do is attach 2 extra cords to the tarp. And the way that I do that is you take this cord tensioner, and there's 2 holes. So one end does not have a knot in it, and I run it through both of the holes. And then the other end, I have a knot in it to keep it from coming through the hole. So that enables me to pull up the cord tensioner, tighten it, and loosen it. After attaching the cord to the tarp, I then use my second hiking pole, wrap the cord around the handle like we did on the first hiking pole, and then stake that out. This hiking pole is set up at 110 centimeters, so 3.5, 4 feet, something like that. And then my first hiking pole was set up at 140 centimeters. Now, if it starts to storm, or if I think it's going to storm during the night before I go to bed, I will remove the first hiking pole. I loosen the tensioner, unwrap the pole, and then pull this tight. Now, I may have to adjust the angle on that to get it just right, but this gets me all 5 corners staked down with one side open and about a 3.5 foot opening that I can get into the tarp. This is the tarp in storm mode, although if it were really nasty and a lot of wind, I would remove the 2 sticks from the sides of the tarp and stake those sides directly down to the ground. The inside of the apex of the tarp has Dyneema fabric sewn inside. In the event there's not any trees, or the trees aren't in the right location and I can't use the overhead line, I can insert my hiking pole into that Dyneema cup and use it to support the top of the tarp. In that event, I would stake down the rear edge like I did initially, then stake down the third and the fourth corner very loosely, insert the hiking pole, and then stake down the 5th corner and tighten everything up. I actually prefer the overhead line because there's no obstructions inside the tarp, but using the hiking pole, there's no give and you can actually get the tarp much more taut. The tarp comes with mitten hooks sewn on each of the 5 seams and a mitten hook attached to a loop in the center of the tarp. I have added some cords between the mitten hooks to create a line to hang wet clothes or other things. If I'm backpacking in an area where I know the mosquitoes are going to be bad, I will bring a bug net to hang inside the tarp. Also in the summer, bugs and moths flying around your headlamp while you're trying to read are not very compatible. So I will sometimes bring the bug net and so I can read at night in a bug-free environment. I've been using a Cedar Summit Nano Mosquito Net. This is a pyramid-shaped net. It hangs inside the center loop in the tarp. It's staked out with 4 golf tees, and I've sewn some bungee cord on 2 of the seams so that I can attach it to mitten hooks inside the tarp to spread out the bug net. The bug net with the 4 golf tees and the bungee cord sewn on weighs about 3.8 ounces. I've had this for some time and I believe I paid about $45 for it. Here's the bug net hanging in my tarp. It is hanging from a loop in the center of the tarp, and then I've sewn some bungee cords in the seams of the tarp, and I have those attached to the mitten hooks to pull out the bug net to give it a little more room. Each of the 4 corners are staked down with golf tees. I only have 2 issues with this tarp, and tonight will be the 456th night of using this tarp. The first issue is on one of the corners. The stitching came loose right here. The stitching was too close to the edge of the fabric, I've seen later models and the stitching is moved back a little bit. It's not right on the edge of the fabric. I'm sure they'll fix that for free if I send it off, but so far it hasn't been a real problem. The second issue is 5 seams is a lot of sealing to do. So anyway, I think next year I'll probably get a Cuban fiber version of this. I think it's about, I don't know, $150 more. This was now like $210, and the Cuban fiber's $150 more than that, but the Cuban fiber weighs 11 ounces, so I'm considering that, but it'll probably be next year. Here's a few pictures of my tarp set up in various places. I hope you enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching.